Hello, Jessica. How are you this morning?
I am so good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you here this morning. You are my breath expert. Thank you to Daniel for the connection. Um, I wanted to ask, can you share before we dive into all the questions and the topic of today, can you share just a little bit about your background?
Sure. So, my name is Jessica Mahler, and I have been teaching yoga for about 10 years. And my entry point into yoga was first a tool for myself to help deal with crippling anxiety that I'd had for as long as I can remember. I was an insomniac. I really had so many issues sleeping and kind of keeping my stuff together. So yoga was like this entryway to that, and then from yoga I had all these amazing teachers, and it was kind of like the gateway drug to all these new practices that really helped me help myself. And so I've been practicing yoga for almost 20 years. I've been teaching it for about 10. And since I started teaching yoga, I've also I'm a Reiki master, so I teach Reiki to other people. I practice it. I read the tarot. I'm currently studying astrology, but the reason we're here today is I'm also a breathwork facilitator. And so, yeah, there's so many different things that you can do with the breath. And I have found over the years that there's just certain types of things that we can do to help ourselves, to calm ourselves, to give us more energy, to bring more focus and clarity into our lives. And this is all just with breathing, not even with any movement. So yeah, just really excited to be here today and share what I know with you.
Awesome. So happy to have you. So let's dive into the questions. And you kind of touched on a little bit. How does breathing help you relax and calm stress?
So to start scientifically, right? The breath is involved with a few different systems in the body, and maybe the more obvious ones are the circulatory and the respiratory systems, but the breath really plays a really huge important role in the nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is is what turns on during fight or flight,
Mhm.
right? And so now more than ever, and my entryway into all this breathing experience too was because of my anxiety, and so I know anxiety very well. And there's an anxiety at an all-time high right now in the
Mhm.
world, and many different reasons for that, and we can go into that in another conversation. But when we're triggered into fight or flight, when we're feeling anxious, right? It turns our energy systems on that help us to get out of a situation quickly, right? So all energy is gone or moves to the mind, to our limbs, and so in that process, systems that we don't need in order to run get shut down, right? So our the repair cycle, our sleep cycle, we energy is taken from there. Our energy is taken from digestion, reproductive organs, right? And so because we're no longer running from saber-toothed tigers like we were when we first came onto this earth, we're not really running from physical threats like that anymore. And anxiety shows up at the ding of our phone, when an email comes in, when we have like interactions on dating apps or meeting new people, right? And so it's just like this constant, oh my God, what's next? Oh my God, what's next? Oh my God, question mark. It's just like the unknown, right? And
Mhm.
so much of these things that we are experiencing in our lives with more technology, with more ways of connecting with people in a virtual space, these are more things to add to our list of triggers for anxiety and to put us into fight or flight. So the sympathetic nervous system is always on. And fun fact about the sympathetic nervous system, it got its name, the sympathetic nervous system, from the Roman physician, Galen, and he named it such about 2,000 years ago, and he saw a direct correlation between our emotions and having to get out of a sticky situation. So fear, anxiety, worry, nervousness, these are all emotions that sent our SNS system sympathetic nervous system into overdrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're in this constant state of alert, it's really hard for the parasympathetic nervous system to turn on. And that is what governs our sleep patterns. It's what governs our digestion. So everything that the sympathetic nervous system kind of steals energy from is what the parasympathetic nervous system governs. And so, you know, with like our phones, our computers, like all these like fake sources of lights, it's also kind of bringing more light to the pineal gland that tells our brain that we should be awake. It's time to be alert, right? And so we just have become this society that has a really hard time shutting down, has a really hard time kind of regulating our own energy, our own nervous systems. And the simplest way that we can do that to turn the PNS on is just with our breath. So I want to ask you to take a few moments right now to just wherever you're at. Sherrie, you're here with me right now, and students, when you get to watch this, I just want you to take if you're sitting in a seat, if you could take your feet to the floor. And I want you to just close your eyes and just start to notice where you feel your breath moving in your body. This isn't a test, no one's getting graded. It's just an awareness exercise to get you to notice where you feel your breath. And if that feels like a foreign question to you, just pay attention to where you feel movement in your body because of the breath. And then let your eyes slowly start to open. And so, Sherrie, since you're with me right now, where did you notice your breath?
When I started, I noticed it in my chest. And as we were moving along, it was like you're supposed to be belly breathing and not chest breathing. So then I moved it to my belly. So it brought a realization that I wasn't fully breathing. Like they tell you to like watch babies breathe, and they breathe with their whole body. So it kind of brought me back to that realization. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Because that's the chest is the number one answer. You know, people say other places too, but the chest is the number one answer. And so, you know, even if you were to watch someone's breath, you would see this area of their body moving, right? But this is just like the top of the lungs. Our lungs come halfway down the torso, if not a little bit more. I mean, we're all built a little bit differently, but our ribs take up just about half of our torso. So there's all this space in our body that we're not utilizing with our breath. Now, when we take these shorter breaths, let's do that for an exercise. Just let's do it all. You can do it all through the mouth or in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just like quick breath. So even like close your eyes here and just to focus on it. Now, for me, that feels like I'm going to start running. Or like
it feels like fire breath.
It feels like I need to do something really fast, right? And you know, I over exaggerated the sound and the speed, but that's kind of how we're breathing on a regular basis when we're not thinking about it, right? So I want to do a little exercise because so much about what we're going to talk about in the rest of this is about how we can use the breath to calm ourselves, how we can use the breath to manage pain, how we can use the breath to kind of bring us back to this place of evenness, right? And so when we're kind of breathing agitatedly, when we're breathing really quickly, right? It makes us want to move quickly. And that's kind of like the conundrum that we have now with our society today and living in an anxious world. where everything is go, 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 answer that email as soon as it comes in, right? Where we feel like we have to be constantly doing.
Mm-hmm.
We can use our breath to help us take our time. Take our time, it's nothing is a marathon. Nothing is a race. It's just when we get to it,
Absolutely.
So find a tall, comfortable seat again. And if it's possible, ground your feet on the floor, and you can let your hands rest in your lap. And again, I want you to close your eyes. So we're turning off all outside information, distractions, stimuli, so that we can bring our awareness to the thing that we're focusing on here today, our breath. And so just again, starting to notice where you feel your breath and notice your breath in your body. You might come back to the chest. And maybe you're starting to breathe a little bit lower. And as you kind of sink into this stillness, I'd like you to focus on trying to breathe both to the front of the body as well as the back. So imagine you're trying to breathe into the front of the lungs as well as the back of the lungs at the same time. And notice if your posture shifts a little bit. So when we continue to breathe like this, but when we breathe just into the front body, into the chest, it's if we're just trying to move into the future. We're breathing into the future, not really paying attention to what is happening here in the present moment. And so when we start to breathe with a little bit more awareness, both to the front and back, you might notice your posture shift as you maybe lean back a little bit from where we started. And then I want you to, instead of breathing front and back now, try to breathe left to right, as if you're trying to breathe your ribs into your armpits. Utilizing more of your lung capacity. And since we exist in 3 dimensions, not 2, I'd like you to thread all of that together. So see if you can breathe both forward and back, side to side. And just notice how much fuller of a breath you naturally take to be able to do that. And then notice too, the length of your breath right now. In order to breathe more fully, we naturally take longer, slower breaths. And then you can let your eyes slowly start to flutter open. How did that feel?
That was amazing. And I felt towards the end, I was like, all right, forward, back, left, right. But I did, when you said breathe towards the back, like I felt, you said you need to be mindful of your posture. I felt like my body was moving kind of back, or my posture. I'm doing my standing desk today. I've been sitting all week and I cannot sit today. But I felt like my body would move to be able to allow for the adjustment and the expansion. So that was fantastic. It was the first time I've done the side to side. I've done the front and the back before, but it just kind of makes you think about it in a different perspective.
Yeah. And so cool about the posture change, like, and that's us. Like, you can't, I'm kind of at an angle right now, but we exist like this.
Right.
We're a forward thinking culture, right? And so when we can direct our breath into all four directions, it helps us feel more present in the moment. And over time, when we engage in a practice like this on a regular basis, we are less likely to get hooked into that anxiety spiral that we often get pulled into. Oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to answer? What do I do next? What do I have else to do on my to-do list?
Exactly.
And we can take a few breaths and be like, okay, I'm just going to focus on what I'm working on right now. And when that's done, I'll get to the next thing,
Which is so
So
important for students. And, they talk about how they're working full time and they're taking classes and they're taking multiple classes. And you mentioned about having an anxiety, and a lot of them have shared that with me, that they're experiencing anxiety because there's so much that they have to do and they're feeling so overwhelmed. And I love that, because I get the same way, where I'm like, oh my God, I was thinking about September 2021 and I was like, hold the presses. Like, let's make it through October. Like, we don't have to stress about September 2021. Let's just finish this month and
totally,
move forward the way that we can move forward. So I
totally.
think all of us kind of have those moments of just like, but to be able, as you said, just focus on the breath. So that was amazing.
Yeah. And like, I think, meditation is a really great tool as well. And when we can combine the two, it's such a powerful, potent experience. And so I breathe like that on a regular basis, just to help me feel centered. If I feel myself getting like wound up about something, to take a minute or two just to breathe. And, I think like, people don't think that the breath can help them that much because it's something that we just do and don't have to think about. But when we do it mindfully and we take the time, and just 2 minutes, 3 minutes, not asking for a 10-minute meditation, but 2 or 3 minutes makes such a huge difference. And we're just so quick to kind of brush it to the side because it just seems like, oh, I'm already doing it, so I should be okay.
Right.
But we're not being mindful about it. And then we're not mindful about whatever it is that we're doing, So, the length of our breaths really affects how anxious or grounded we feel. And so, when we did that little breathing experiment earlier, when we were breathing really fast, not to say that that's a bad thing. Like, there are definitely breathing exercises where we breathe faster to give us more energy, to find a little bit more clarity, to like kind of clear the mind of extraneous thoughts, extra thoughts, so that we can be more fully present. So, when we're not engaged in a mindful, active breathing and we're breathing really fast, the shorter breaths send a message to our nervous system that something is wrong, that something is off. And it's like pulling energy from other areas of our body to help us get out of a situation. Even if we're just sitting at our desk dealing with like an angry email from our boss or coworker, you know what I mean? We might not have anywhere physically to go, but it sends that anxious energy, and we're like, I gotta do this. And that feeling.
It just kind of calms it all down.
That comes with that. But yeah, when we take more mindful breaths, we can totally shift our entire state of being, not just our state of mind, but like how we are feeling and showing up physically, which I think is really cool. There are exercises that you can do of breathing with your mouth. There are exercises you can do of breathing that are just usually using the nose. There's a really, really fantastic book that I read this summer, and if you guys are interested in breathing, I highly recommend it. Especially, I don't know, I don't have as big of a medical background as everyone watching this, but there's a book called Breath by James Nestor. It just came out this year. He did an interview with Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan podcast, a couple of weeks ago, or a couple months ago, I guess by now. And the book is called Breath, and the author's name is James Nestor. And this book is like the case for how bad mouth breathing actually is for the body. And he's really proposing that we all shift to completely breathing in and out through the nose as often as possible. And he found, he did a lot of experiments on himself, and he found that mouth breathing was linked to, and when I say mouth breathing, I mean like breathing in and out through the mouth regularly. Yeah. A lot of us sleep with our mouths open. A lot of us, like when we exercise, are breathing through the mouth. And it seems like it's the easier thing to do. It seems like we're pulling more breath in, but because of where our nasal cavity is in the body versus the mouth, like we can take more in at once, but it's not going to be able to move down into our system to oxygenate our cells and for circulatory, respiratory system, metabolism. It's not going to access the organs and the blood that it needs it fast enough as it would breathing in through your nose. And just, it feels different. Take a moment to both breathe in through your nose and let that go. And then breathe in through your mouth and let it go. It just doesn't go as deep. It just doesn't go as deep, So he, in this book, he says that the mouth breathing has been linked to increased blood pressure, hypertension, which then could lead to a heart attack and stroke, heart rate variability plummets, and which alerts the body that it's in a chronic state of stress. Our pulse increases, our body temperature decreases, and there's just a lack of mental clarity. There's more brain fog when we're breathing more through the mouth. There are lots of breathing exercises that you can do that utilize mouth breath. And I think that they are very powerful tools that we can use. But on a regular basis, I know that we should be breathing more through our nose, because I've been experimenting. I run. And I've run sometimes with the mask on because of COVID right now. And it's been a really interesting experiment in noticing how the breath is really oxygenating my body and my cells and my muscles as I'm moving. It's really hard to breathe solely through your nose while you're running, but I can feel a huge difference, and it almost makes it feel like I'm gasping for air once I start breathing through the mouth again. And I haven't mastered it yet. It's still something that I'm working on, but I notice a huge difference. I don't feel like I am being properly fed with the breath when I breathe in and out through the mouth versus the nose when I run. And it's just a really interesting feeling. And if there's any runners out there watching this, give it a try and notice how you feel. It definitely is harder, but you will feel a huge difference in just your lung and chest capacity. And you might even notice that you can run longer because you're able to maintain this breath. And also when we breathe through the nose, it helps us keep the heart rate down. And if you've ever done a strenuous exercise and you're kind of panting like a dog or a cat at the end, you're just not, it's not that it's so bad, but you're not able to pull in the oxygen that your body needs to restore itself, that it's kind of craving after you've used your body in this really hard, fast, intense way. And breathing through the nose helps you breathe at a more calm and steady rate. The book Breath, super fascinating. The guy talks about how people use breath to cure scoliosis. There was a pulmonary doctor who joined the American Olympic track team to train the athletes how to breathe properly. And this was in the 70s. And I believe that was the first time in Olympian history that Americans won a track and field medal, because the guy had trained all the runners to breathe through their nose and not their mouth, which I thought was fascinating. So I don't want to keep talking about his book, but it is really fascinating if you're curious.
And what comes to mind for me is it makes you present, where you have to really pay attention to, are you breathing through the nose or are you breathing through the mouth? What's actually happening, so that it brings you kind of back in center versus just kind of blindly walking around and just taking it all for granted.
Yeah. And that puts you in a meditative state too.
Yep.
You know, a more focused, clear state of like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to focus on this and stay with it. And anything that we do, right, we want to focus. We want to bring all our awareness, our any energy, our attention to whatever it is that we're doing. And when we're taking these shorter breaths, these shallower breaths, breathing faster, it makes us feel like we need to be moving faster. It makes us feel like we need to tackle 5 different things at the same time. And I don't know about you, but I have found that as much as I've tried to multitask in my entire life, it doesn't really work.
And they've done full studies on that. You can't do it because your brain literally has to stop and go to the next task, and then stop and then go back to the other task. Like that whole, it doesn't really work. So yes. The older you get, the more you realize that, where you're like, I'm doing too much at once. Let me stop. Let me focus on one thing and then get to the next. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Thankfully, we get wiser as we get older, right?
Yes. It's not too late.
So, you know, the Hindus consider the breath and the spirit the same thing. And so when you were breathing, you were breathing in the gods, you were breathing in deities, you were breathing in a sacredness. And so the Hindus really believed that the breath was sacred, and came up with a lot of different techniques on how to use the breath to feel more at one with God, the gods, other, divine, spirit, you know, whatever your word is for like that, the force that drives life, right? And these practices help to preserve both the physical and mental health. Buddhists use breathing techniques to get towards enlightenment, and they have a slew of different things that you can do and how to breathe to help you find that meditative state more. And there's just been so many cultures over time that have focused on breathing techniques to facilitate health, to facilitate kind of like a I don't want to say like graduating to the next step, but to feel more whole and to feel more connected. And that's really what the breath is all about. And in fact, like, you know, I do a lot of work with energy and healing. And, you know, if you've ever heard of the aura, it is like this energetic kind of orb that's around us. I like to think of that scene in the Wizard of Oz with Glinda the Good Witch in the bubble. Like the bubble is our aura, and it could be as big as Glinda's if we breathe correctly. If we're taking shallower breaths, that bubble isn't going to be as wide. It's going to the energy, our protective layer is just going to kind of hover maybe a couple inches over our physical form. And so you know, our aura is this, it's kind of like our antenna, this extrasensory perception that helps us read a room. It helps us understand how other people are feeling. It helps us understand if we need to get out of a situation. Like if you ever think of a deer or a squirrel or any animal that you might see in a yard or outside, they have like this like seemingly sixth sense when, you know, they can hear tons of noises and they hear one specific noise and they just kind of turn to check out what it is. But that's because of their extrasensory perception too. We all have this ability. And when we're more in tune and more in touch with our breath, we're also more in tune and more in touch with the world around us. So our bodies are giving us cues, but also the world around us is giving us cues, and we feed off of that. And so when we hang out with anxious people, we feel more anxious. You know, when we hang out with more calm people, we feel a little bit more at ease. So if there's ever been like a certain friend or a certain teacher who just kind of like is always seems super grounded, super together, doesn't seem to be as bothered or as agitated as some of our other friends, like it just feels really good to be around them. And that is partially because our aura is picking up on their energy. And so yeah, if we're only breathing into the chest, our aura is not going to expand too far away from our body. But if we're able to take those fuller breaths like we did before, that like that 3-dimensional breathing, front, forward, front, back, side to side, then our bubble will look a little bit more like Glinda's from The Wizard of Oz.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you talked about, I know you mentioned the book and the Nestor and the deep breathing. Are there any other proven benefits or that you've seen of deep breathing on the body? We are talking a lot about pain this semester, so if there's anything you could share in that regard.
Totally. So first I want to say like, oh, where did I put it? Because it was so good and I want to make sure I say it out loud. Okay, I can't find it right this second, but basically what I wanted to say was we give power to what we give our attention to. Mm-hmm. So in terms of pain management, yes, we can use our breath to help us move through pain, to help us kind of dull the pain a bit, but we can't do that on the first go. We can't do that on the first try, right? Think about pregnant people. Forever, this breathing technique called Lamaze was taught, and I actually don't. From what I know about Lamaze, and I think it was like or something like that.
It doesn't work. That's what I can tell you.
That's not going to. That's not really going to help. But and this is, I want to share an exercise to help us to understand this more. But when we can direct our breath downward, when we can bring awareness into our body of like a place that feels tight, a place that feels tense, we can move through challenging experiences, whether it's physical pain or an emotional trauma or something like, maybe you lost somebody during COVID, maybe you lost someone to a car accident, maybe you lost somebody or a pet, and it feels really hard to stay present, or it feels really hard to like find awareness in our body because everything in our body is telling us, I don't like this feeling. I want to get out of my body for a minute. I want to lose this uncomfortable feeling, right? If we can connect to our breath and direct our breath downward, and that's what pregnant people need to do, is move the breath down. It's like a force to help push the baby out when it's time for labor. Mm-hmm. Then we can withstand the pain a little bit more. I didn't mean to keep talking about pregnancy, but it's such a great example because we associate pain with labor, we associate pain with childbirth, and there's actually like this thing called orgasmic birth, where if the person giving birth to baby has a handle on their breath, an awareness about their breath, and awareness about their body, it can be kind of an orgasmic experience rather than a painful one. And there's been countless stories of pregnant people, however you associate, giving birth in this way that they didn't experience pain, they didn't have an epidural, and they had a really almost kind of like wild time because they were able to harness their breath in such a way that they were able to bypass the pain. So I want to teach you guys a breath, and we do this breath in yoga. It's called Ujjayi breath, ocean sounding breath. And if you've ever taken a yoga class too, like breath is very much linked with the movements, and that is to help us to move. There's certain movements that you do when you inhale, and there's certain types of movements that you do with an exhale. But it's also to help us to kind of maintain like an equilibrium, homeostasis, when it feels really challenging, right? So if you've ever had a teacher that's like held you in a warrior 2 forever, or pigeon forever, or or something where it felt like, oh my God, I don't know how much longer I can hold this, that's why we breathe, to help us get through challenges, basically.
Makes perfect sense.
So Ujjayi breathing is it's a little funny, it's a little tricky, and like the best way that I can teach you how to do it is to, I just want you can take your hand out in front of your mouth. I'll turn so you can see, and you kind of want to breathe with your mouth open for this time. We'll close our mouth in a second. You want to breathe towards your hand as if you're trying to fog up a mirror. So right, and you feel a little bit of like a constriction happening in the back of the throat. We want that. Do that again. Now, I want you to close your mouth and try to find that same constriction in your throat. Still trying to breathe as if you're trying to fog up a mirror, but your mouth is closed. And so you'll hear, kind of sounds like an ocean, the sound coming from your throat as you do that. Can you feel it?
I hear it and I feel it.
You hear it and you feel it. And so as you do that, I can't tell if my microphone is picking up the sound or not, but as you do that, there is like a sensation of downward movement.
Yes.
From your throat. It feels like there's something, air, energy, something is moving down. And that's what you want for in labor, when you're giving birth, this downward motion. But also, this is how we can start to direct our breath into places that feel pain, that are uncomfortable. And so, if you've ever been to yoga class and the teacher says, breathe into your arm or breathe into your hip, and you're like, I don't really, my nose is up here, my mouth is up here, like, how do you want me to breathe into that area? It's where the teacher is really trying to get you to yes, breathe into that area, but direct an awareness, direct your energy downward. And so when you do that, you have no choice but to take a longer, slower breath, which is also, it's like double the benefit, right? You're breathing to subside some pain, subside some uncomfortable experience in the moment, and you're also slowing the breath and helping you to focus and bring more awareness to you. So yeah, you can meditate like that. You can sit for a few moments. If you are, during COVID, I'm sure, from sitting so long at home or anything gets tight or cramped, you can spend a few moments playing with that breath, directing your awareness and the breath to any part of the body, and that can help to manage pain.
Fantastic. So I know we have, you shared so much information. Is there any other insight you want to share with our students in regards to just breathing, the power of breathing, that maybe we didn't cover already?
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot more to say, but I feel like I said quite a lot already, but our breath is just like this really powerful tool that we take for granted, and especially for pre-med, where it feels like there's so much pressure on us to have to keep the grades up, to read as much as we can, or even the reading, I'm sure, feels really overwhelming. I just would really recommend that you take a few moments in those moments of overwhelm to breathe. You know, it feels counterintuitive to have to take a time out, to pause when it feels like there's so much to do. And believe me, I lived in that place for a really long time, even the beginning years of my yoga teaching experience. To stop and meditate, to stop and breathe when I had so much I had to do. It seemed like the craziest thing in the world. But really, when we take that time to be with ourselves, to bring awareness, to bring us more into the present moment, it's really the best thing that you can do for your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, and your whole life will benefit from you taking just a couple of minutes with yourself to breathe, to recenter, and find your focus again.
Absolutely. There's a meme that I love, and it says, if you can't take 10 minutes to meditate, then you probably need 60.
Yes, I saw that too. It's so true.
It
It's
is
so
like
true.
you can't, and it's that when you said that, it's that exact moment when your anxiety, your stress level is so very high that you need
Mm-hmm.
to use those tools to just stop, take a moment, assess perspective. Like I said, I was
Yeah.
thinking about September 2021, and I'm like, reel it back,
Yeah.
and just
Well,
be in the moment.
yeah, it's cool. For Christmas, my partner gave me like the iWatch or whatever,
Hmm.
and I get reminders like 2 or 3 times a day to breathe, just for like 1 to 2 minutes, and that's all that you need. You know,
Yeah,
just
set those
a little
alarms.
time out, a little like a breathing break. You know,
Oh, sorry, my son is also in school today.
you're okay.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much. This was so insightful. I feel so much better breathing because I do have a to do list. You know, the students are always like, oh, the professors aren't that busy, but I'm in school too. So between creating content, homeschooling with the kids, and doing homework, it does get stressful. So this really did. I feel much more grounded, and just more conscious and aware of my breathing and breathing from the belly than I was at say 9 o'clock this morning. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us. This was absolutely phenomenal. And I have your email address. So if the students have any other questions or maybe want to book a breathing session with you, I will share your contact information so they can reach out to you directly because I know you're in DC and they are in the
Yeah,
surrounding DMV area. So thank you so much.
of course. Thank you. It was such an honor, and good luck to everyone. Happy breathing.
Thank you.